The massive alien ships filled Earth's sky like dark clouds before a storm. Commander Hyanwu Park pressed his face against the cracked window of Lunar Base, watching the last human space station explode in a burst of orange flame. The metal pieces scattered into the void, spinning slowly as they drifted away from Earth. "Commander Park, sir," Lieutenant Minji Kim called from behind him, her voice shaking. "All our remaining ships are sending surrender messages. The war is over." Park turned around and looked at the main screen. Red lights blinked everywhere, showing where human defenses had fallen. For 3 long years, Earth had fought against the Valak Dominion. Now their enemies, giant warships, surrounded the planet like hungry wolves circling wounded prey. The Valak had come from deep space with weapons humanity had never seen before. Their plasma cannons could melt through the strongest armor. Their shields could stop any missile or laser beam. One by one, they had destroyed Earth's colonies on Mars and the moon bases. They had burned the orbital shipyards and crushed the asteroid mining stations. Park remembered the first day of the invasion. He had been a young captain then, commanding a small patrol ship near Jupiter. The Valak fleet had appeared suddenly, their ships emerging from some kind of spacefold technology. Within hours, they had wiped out the outer defense ring. Within days, they controlled everything beyond Earth's moon. "Sir, look at this," Minji said, pointing to her screen. "The aliens are celebrating." Through the base's damaged cameras, they could see the Valak ships lighting up with bright colors. Purple and green lights danced across their hulls in patterns that looked almost like fireworks. The alien crews were having a victory party right above Earth's dying planet. Park clenched his fists. The surrender codes were real. Admiral Song had ordered all remaining forces to stop fighting and broadcast the official surrender message. The proud Earth Defense Force, which had once numbered in the thousands of ships, was now reduced to maybe 50 broken vessels hiding in the asteroid belt. But something felt wrong to Park. He had served under Admiral Song for 15 years. The old man was stubborn and never gave up easily. Why would he surrender now when Earth itself was still unharmed? The Valak had not yet landed on the planet's surface. They were waiting for something. "Minji, show me the seismic readings from Earth," Park ordered. The young lieutenant's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "Sir, there are some strange readings coming from the planet. Small earthquakes in places where there shouldn't be any." Park studied the data carefully. The earthquakes were happening in exactly 6 locations around the world. One in the mountains of Korea, another under the Sahara Desert, a third deep in the Amazon jungle. The pattern was too perfect to be natural. "These aren't random," he whispered to himself. Minji leaned closer to look at the screen. "Sir, what do you think it means?" Before Park could answer, his communication device beeped softly. A message appeared on the small screen, but it was written in a code he had not seen since his training days at the academy. Only the highest level commanders knew this code. It was meant for the most secret operations. The message was short. "Phoenix Protocol activated. Maintain position. Do not interfere. Admiral Song." Park's heart began to beat faster. Phoenix Protocol was a legend, a story that older officers sometimes whispered about in dark corners of military bars. Most people thought it was just a myth, a fantasy about some impossible secret weapon that could save Earth if everything else failed. But Admiral Song was using the codename now, and the strange earthquakes were happening in a perfect pattern. "Maybe the legends were true." "Minji, I want you to monitor all communications from Earth," Park said quietly. "But don't record anything. Just listen and remember." "Sir, is something happening down there?" Park looked back at the window where the Valak ships continued their celebration. Their lights were brighter now, and he could see small transport ships beginning to separate from the main fleet. The aliens were preparing to land on Earth and claim their prize. "I think," Park said slowly, "that Admiral Song has been planning something very special, something the Valak don't know about." Far below them, hidden deep under mountains and deserts, ancient machines were waking up. Scientists who had worked in secret for years were checking their instruments one final time. The surrender was real, but it was also a lie. Earth's military forces had given up, but Earth itself had one more card to play. The Valak ships continued their victory dance, completely unaware that they were celebrating too early. They thought they had won the war, but the real battle was about to begin. And this time, the weapon would not be ships or guns or missiles. This time, Earth itself would fight back. Park smiled grimly as he watched the alien fleet. "Enjoy your party," he whispered. "It won't last much longer." 3 kilometers beneath the snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas, Dr. Jamin Lee wiped his sweaty palms on his lab coat. The underground facility was cold, but his hands were shaking from nervousness. not the temperature. Around him, 12 of Earth's brightest scientists worked at their stations, their faces lit by the glow of computer screens. The room was huge, carved out of solid rock over many years. Giant machines lined the walls, humming with power that came from deep geothermal vents. Thick cables ran along the ceiling like metal snakes, carrying electricity to equipment that most people could never understand. Dr. Lee called Taeho Shin from across the room. The Seoul Underground Station is ready. All systems are working perfectly. Lee nodded and looked at his main control screen. Green lights showed that hidden facilities in 4 Korean cities were all connected and ready. These installations had been built in secret over the past 10 years, hidden so deep underground that no satellite or alien scanner could find them. The project had started as simple research. Lee and his team had been studying something called quantum physics, trying to understand how space and time worked. They had discovered that, with enough energy, they could actually bend space itself, creating tears in the fabric of reality. When the Valak invaded 3 years ago, the government had ordered Lee to turn his research into a weapon. It seemed impossible at first. How could you fight giant alien warships with theories about space and time? But Lee had found a way. If you could create enough quantum energy at exactly the right points on Earth's surface, you could tear holes in space itself. These holes could move things from one place to another, across vast distances in an instant. Dr. Lee, we're getting signals from all the other sites, reported Dr. Sunmi Park, a young woman who managed the communication systems. The Amazon facility is ready. The Sahara station is ready. The Rocky Mountain base is ready. All 6 locations are synchronized. Lee looked at the massive chamber in the center of the room. Inside the thick glass walls, strange blue energy swirled like trapped lightning. This was the quantum resonance chamber, the heart of their weapon. It had taken 3 years to build and another year to test in secret. The energy came from Earth itself. Deep beneath the facility, massive drilling equipment tapped into the planet's core, drawing power from the molten rock below. Similar systems existed at all 6 hidden locations around the world. Together, they could generate more energy than all of Earth's power plants combined. Taeho, run one final check on all systems, Lee ordered. We only get one chance at this. Taeho's fingers moved quickly across his control panel. Numbers and graphs appeared on screens throughout the room. Quantum field generators are at full power, he reported. Dimensional anchor points are locked, and stable energy flow is steady at all locations. Lee thought about the years of work that had led to this moment. When the project first began, many scientists had called it impossible. They said you couldn't weaponize space itself. They said the energy requirements were too massive. They said the calculations were too complex. But Lee had proved them wrong. Working with teams at universities around the world, he had solved the mathematical problems one by one. They had built the equipment piece by piece, hiding it in deep mines and underground research stations. Even during the war, when the were bombing cities above ground, the work had continued in secret. Dr. Lee, incoming message from Admiral Song, announced Sunmi. He says the surrender transmissions have been sent. The Valak believe they have one. Lee smiled grimly. The surrender was part of the plan. While the aliens celebrated their victory, Earth's secret weapon was preparing to strike. The Valak thought they were safe in their orbit around the planet. They had no idea what was about to happen. All stations report ready status. Taeho called out. We are synchronized with installations on every continent. The quantum field is stable and growing stronger. Lee looked around the room at his team. These men and women had worked without rest for 3 years, knowing that if they failed, Earth would fall to the alien invaders. They had families above ground who were depending on them, children who would grow up as slaves if this weapon didn't work. Everyone, listen carefully, Lee announced. In 60 seconds, we will activate Protocol Phoenix. Once we begin, there is no way to stop the process. The quantum fields will tear holes in space around the alien fleet. We don't know exactly what will happen to their ships, but our calculations show they will be scattered across the galaxy. He paused and looked at each person in the room. This will also damage our planet. The energy release will cause earthquakes and storms. Many people may die. But if we don't act now, everyone will die when the Valak finish their invasion. The room fell silent except for the humming of the machines. Everyone understood what they were about to do. They were gambling with the entire planet, betting everything on an untested weapon that existed only in theory until today. Lee's hand moved toward the master control switch. Around the world, 5 other scientists were doing the same thing in their own hidden facilities. 30 seconds, he announced. The quantum energy in the chamber grew brighter, casting blue shadows on the walls. Admiral Mordith stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her transport ships prepare to land on Earth's surface. The human surrender had been broadcast on all frequencies, and her crews were already celebrating their easy victory. Her 4 yellow eyes studied the planet below, looking for the best places to establish Valak control centers. "Admiral, we are detecting unusual seismic activity on the planet," reported Commander Vextar, his scaled hands dancing across the sensor controls. "There are vibrations coming from 6 different locations." Mordith barely glanced at the readings. "The humans are probably destroying their own weapons, so we cannot use them. It does not matter. Begin the landing operations." But before the first transport could launch, the ground on Earth began to shake violently. Mountains in Asia suddenly cracked open like eggs, and massive crystal structures burst through the rock. Similar explosions happened in deserts, jungles, and under the ocean floor. 6 identical facilities emerged from the planet's crust, their surfaces glowing with bright blue energy. "What is happening down there?" Mordith demanded, her voice sharp with confusion. Commander Vextar's eyes went wide as he stared at his instruments. "Admiral, those structures are generating enormous amounts of energy. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." The crystal facilities on Earth's surface began to pulse in perfect rhythm, like giant hearts beating together. The energy they produced was so powerful that it made the space around the Valak fleet shimmer and bend like heat waves rising from hot pavement on lunar base. Commander Hyanwu Park pressed his face against the observation window, watching the impossible sight unfold. The alien ships in Earth's orbit were beginning to flicker in and out of existence, as if someone was turning them on and off like lights. "Sir, what's happening to the enemy fleet?" Lieutenant Minji Kim asked, her voice filled with wonder and fear. Park could hardly believe what he was seeing. The massive Valak warships, each one the size of a small city, were starting to fade away like ghosts. Some ships disappeared completely for several seconds before reappearing in different positions. Others split in half, with their front sections vanishing while their rear sections remained visible. "The quantum installations," Park whispered. "They're actually doing it." Deep beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Jamin Lee watched his instruments as the quantum field reached maximum power. The energy readings were so high that several monitors had overloaded and shut down. Around him, his team worked frantically to keep the system stable. "Dr. Lee, the dimensional rifts are opening," shouted Taiho Shin over the roar of the machines. "We're tearing holes in space itself." Lee could see it happening on his main screen. The 6 facilities around Earth were creating invisible tiers in the fabric of reality. These tiers were like doorways that led to random places across the galaxy. Anything that touched one of these doorways would be instantly transported thousands of light-years away. Admiral Mordith felt her flagship shudder as something invisible grabbed hold of it. Through the bridge windows, she could see stars that didn't belong in Earth's sky. Her navigation systems were showing impossible readings. "Commander Vextar report," she barked. "Admiral, we're being pulled into some kind of spatial distortion," Vextar replied, his voice panicked. "Half our fleet has already disappeared. The humans have created tiers in space around our ships." Mordith watched in horror as her mighty war fleet was torn away from Earth's orbit. Ships that had taken decades to build vanished in seconds, scattered across the galaxy like leaves in a hurricane. Some vessels were cut in half by the dimensional tiers, their crews lost forever in the void between stars. The quantum weapon didn't destroy the Valak ships. Instead, it sent them away to random locations throughout known space. Some ships found themselves orbiting distant stars thousands of light-years from home. Others appeared in empty space between galaxies, with no way to navigate back to civilization. From Lunar Base, Park watched the last of the enemy fleet disappear. Where once there had been thousands of alien warships, now there was only empty space, filled with floating debris and the strange blue glow of the quantum tiers slowly closing. "Sir, long-range sensors show no remaining Valak ships in the solar system," Minji reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're gone. All of them." Park couldn't speak for several minutes. Humanity had been facing complete destruction just hours ago. Now their enemies had been scattered across the galaxy by a weapon that seemed to come from science fiction rather than reality. On Earth's surface, the 6 crystal facilities began to dim as their power systems overloaded. Dr. Lee and his team had known this would be a one-time weapon. The energy required to tear holes in space was so enormous that it would burn out their equipment after a single use, but it had worked. Earth's final gambit had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The planet had turned itself into a weapon and used the laws of physics themselves to defeat an enemy that seemed unbeatable. As the quantum tiers closed and space returned to normal, one message broadcast from Earth to the empty void where the Valak fleet had been: humanity does not surrender. We adapt, we survive, and we fight back with everything we have. The celebration had ended too early for the aliens. Earth had played its last card, and it was a winning hand. Admiral Moore gripped the railing of her command bridge as her flagship spun helplessly through space. Through the main viewing window she could see a massive red star that was slowly dying, its surface covered with dark spots and violent solar flares. This was not Earth's yellow sun. This was somewhere else entirely. Navigator, where are we? She demanded, her 4 eyes wide with panic. The Valak navigator worked frantically at his control station, but his instruments showed readings that made no sense. Admiral, according to our star charts, we are 12,000 light-years from Earth, but that's impossible. No ship can travel that far in seconds. Around them, empty space stretched in all directions. The rest of the mighty Valak fleet was nowhere to be seen. Mordith's flagship, which had commanded over 3,000 warships just minutes ago, was now completely alone near a dying star in a distant part of the galaxy. Try to contact the other ships, Mordith ordered, though she already knew it was hopeless. Her communication officer shook his head sadly. No response on any frequency, Admiral. We are receiving no signals from any other Valak vessels. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away in the opposite direction, Commander Vextar found his heavy cruiser drifting in the cold emptiness between galaxies. His ship's sensors showed nothing but darkness in every direction. The nearest star was so far away that its light was barely visible even through his most powerful telescopes. How did this happen? He whispered to himself, staring at the impossible readings on his navigation screen. Back on Earth, deep in his underground facility, Dr. Jamin Lee watched the quantum displacement process on his monitors. The computer showed a 3D map of the galaxy with thousands of small dots scattered across it. Each dot represented a Valak ship that had been moved by the dimensional rifts. Tejo, the distribution pattern is working perfectly, Lee called to his chief engineer. The enemy vessels are being spread across a sphere 20,000 light-years wide. No 2 ships are close enough to make contact with each other. Tejo Shin wiped sweat from his forehead as he monitored the power systems. The quantum generators were running at maximum capacity, drawing energy from Earth's core at a rate that made the instruments glow red with warning lights. Dr. Lee, we're pushing the equipment beyond safe limits, Tejo warned. The quantum anchors are starting to overload. We have maybe 10 more minutes before they burn out completely. Lee nodded grimly. They had always known this weapon could only be used once. The energy required to tear holes in space and scatter an entire fleet across the galaxy was so enormous that it would destroy their equipment in the process. Above ground, the 6 crystal facilities continued to pulse with blue energy, but cracks were beginning to appear in their surfaces. Steam rose from the installations as their internal systems overheated from the incredible power flowing through them. On Lunar Base, Commander Hyanwu Park watched the last few Valak ships flicker in and out of existence around Earth. Some vessels would appear for a few seconds, their crews probably trying to understand what was happening to them, before vanishing again to some distant corner of space. Sir, we're detecting massive power fluctuations from the quantum installations, Lieutenant Min-ji Kim reported. It looks like they're running out of energy. Park could see it happening. The blue glow around Earth was growing dimmer, and the strange distortions in space were beginning to fade. But it didn't matter now. The job was almost complete. Thousands of light-years away, small groups of Valak survivors were discovering just how completely they had been defeated. Some ships found themselves in solar systems they had never seen before, surrounded by strange stars and alien planets. Others appeared in nebulae or asteroid fields, their crews struggling to figure out where they were. The Valak communication network, which had connected their vast empire across hundreds of worlds, was now completely broken. Ships that had been part of the same battle group were scattered so far apart that their radio signals would take decades to reach each other, if they ever did. Captain Zikma sat in his damaged destroyer watching his crew try to repair systems that had been torn apart by the dimensional displacement. His ship had materialized inside an asteroid field, and the sudden appearance had caused several collisions with floating rocks. Captain, we've managed to get long-range sensors working, his science officer reported, but the readings don't match any known star charts. We're completely lost. Zikma closed his eyes and tried to understand what the humans had done. Somehow they had turned their entire planet into a weapon that could move things across impossible Distances, it was technology beyond anything the Valak had ever encountered. Back on Earth, the quantum facilities were finally reaching their limits. One by one, the crystal installations began to crack and shut down. The blue energy that had been tearing holes in space flickered and died like candles being blown out. Final displacement complete, Lee announced to his exhausted team. All enemy vessels have been relocated. The weapon is shutting down automatically. As the last quantum anchor burned out and the dimensional rifts closed forever, Earth's sky returned to normal. Where once there had been thousands of alien warships, now there was only peaceful space and distant stars. The Valak Dominion's mighty invasion fleet had been scattered like seeds in the wind, each ship alone and lost in the vast darkness of the galaxy. Commander Hyanwu Park stood at the cracked window of Lunar Base, watching Earth slowly turn below him. The planet looked different now. Where once there had been familiar mountain ranges and coastlines, huge craters marked the spots where the quantum installations had been. Smoke still rose from some of the holes, and he could see that entire sections of continents had shifted position. "Sir, the final damage reports are coming in," Lieutenant Minji Kim said quietly, her voice heavy with sadness. "The earthquakes caused by the quantum anchors have displaced over 10 million people. Whole cities have been destroyed by the ground shifts." Park closed his eyes and felt the weight of what they had done. Yes, they had defeated the Valak invasion, but at a cost that would haunt humanity for generations. The quantum weapon had saved Earth from alien conquest, but it had also wounded the planet itself. "What about the alien fleet?" Park asked. "Long-range sensors show no organized Valak presence anywhere within 100 light-years of Earth," Minji reported. "They're completely scattered. Some of our deep space monitoring stations are picking up distress signals from individual ships, but they're all alone and thousands of light-years apart. Down on Earth's surface, the 6 quantum facilities were nothing but smoking ruins. The crystal installations that had torn holes in space were now piles of melted metal and broken rock. Dr. Jamin Lee and his team had evacuated their underground laboratory just minutes before the Himalayan facility collapsed, taking half the mountain with it. The planet's magnetic field, which protected Earth from dangerous radiation from space, was flickering like a broken light bulb. Scientists around the world were working frantically to understand what the quantum experiment had done to Earth's core. Some feared that the magnetic field might fail completely, leaving the planet defenseless against solar storms. Meanwhile, 12,000 light-years away near a dying red star, Admiral Mortith sat in her damaged command chair as her flagship systems failed one by one. The life support was running on emergency power, and half her crew was dead or injured from the violent dimensional displacement. "Admiral, we're receiving scattered transmissions from other ships in the fleet," her communication officer reported weakly, "but they're coming from all across the galaxy. Some ships are reporting that they're trapped in black hole systems. Others say they're drifting in empty space between star clusters." Mordith listened to the desperate messages from her scattered commanders. Captain Zikmur was stranded in an asteroid field with his engines destroyed. Commander Vexstar was alone, in the void between galaxies with no hope of rescue. Hundreds of other ships were reporting similar fates. The mighty Valak Dominion, which had conquered dozens of worlds and commanded the largest fleet in known space, had been destroyed in a single day by an enemy they had thought was already defeated. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth," the communication officer announced. "It's being broadcast on all frequencies." Mortith listened as a human voice spoke across the vast distance of space. The message was simple but chilling. "To all species in the galaxy who might be listening to this transmission, we are the humans of Earth. Today we were invaded by the Valak Dominion, who believed they had conquered us. They celebrated their victory too early." The voice continued, calm and steady despite everything that had happened. "We want every civilization in known space to understand something important. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose. We did not surrender. We did not accept defeat. Instead, we turned our entire planet into a weapon and scattered our enemies across the galaxy." Park recognized the voice. It was Admiral Song, broadcasting from Earth's military command center even as earthquakes shook the building around him. "Remember, us not as the conquered, but as the species that chose to move the very fabric of space itself rather than surrender to invaders. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks humanity can be easily defeated. We will fight with everything we have, even if it means sacrificing our own world." The transmission ended, and space fell silent again. Mordith stared at her communication screen, finally understanding the full scope of what the humans had done. They hadn't just won a battle, they had sent a message that would travel across the galaxy for thousands of years. Every species that heard the story would know that Earth's people had chosen to wound their own planet rather than accept conquest. As her ship's power systems failed, and the lights on the bridge went dark, Mortith realized that the humans had achieved something more than military victory. They had become a legend. Stories of the species that weaponized space itself would spread from world to world, making other civilizations think twice before attacking planets they assumed were defenseless. On Lunar Base, Park continued to watch Earth as it slowly healed from its self-inflicted wounds. The continents were settling into new positions, and the worst of the earthquakes had stopped. Rescue teams were working around the clock to help the millions of displaced people. The price of victory had been enormous, but humanity had survived. They had proven that even when facing impossible odds, they would never give up. Earth had played its final card and won the game, even though the cost of winning would be felt for generations to come. The Valak had indeed celebrated too early. Earth's last move had changed everything.